If your television suddenly turns itself on at 3:14 a.m. tonight, do not look at the screen, and whatever you do, do not check behind the couch. Because in the winter of 1994, 300 families in a single county watched a broadcast that wasn't supposed to exist. And by morning, 42 of them had completely vanished, leaving behind nothing but the smell of burnt plastic and a single hand-carved wooden tooth on their living room floors. It started on a Tuesday, November 15th, 1994. The local news station in Blackwood County had just signed off for the night, cutting to the standard color bar test pattern. The world was quiet, but at exactly 3:13 a.m., the test pattern didn't fade into static. It melted. The audio didn't screech. It hummed a low rhythmic vibration, the exact frequency of a human heartbeat under extreme panic. Across the county, citizens who were fast asleep reported waking up instantly, pulled from their beds by a sudden freezing drop in room temperature. When they looked at their televisions, the screens weren't blank. They were broadcasting a cartoon. But this wasn't something meant for Saturday mornings. The animation was fluid, expensive, and completely silent. It featured a single character, a tall, lanky figure in a dark trench coat with a completely blank, featureless face. The figure was just walking down a long, dimly lit hallway. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. It was just the rhythmic, heavy thumping of the audio track. Many people tried to turn their TVs off. They pulled the dials. They pressed the power buttons. Nothing worked. Even when they yanked the heavy power cords straight out of the wall outlets, the glass screen stayed lit, glowing with that pale, sickly animation. That's when the broadcast did something impossible. It adapted. Around the 15-minute mark, the figure in the hallway stopped walking. It slowly turned its head and looked directly into the camera, directly at whoever was sitting on the couch. According to the few survivors who documented the night in diary entries later recovered by police, the background of the cartoon changed for every single household. If you were watching from a house with a blue velvet sofa, the cartoon character was suddenly standing in a cartoon version of your exact living room. If you had a grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, you could hear that exact clock ticking through the TV speakers, perfectly synced. The broadcast wasn't just sending a signal out, it was looking through the glass. It was scanning the room. By 3:35 a.m., the psychological toll broke the viewers into 3 distinct groups, and this is where the rules of the incident become terrifyingly clear. The first group panicked. They threw blankets over the television sets, smashed the screens with bats, or ran out into the freezing November rain. Every single person who broke the screen or left their home reported hearing a loud, wet pop on it. When they looked back, the space where their television had been was empty. Not broken, just completely gone, replaced by a perfectly circular hole scorched into the floorboards. The second group did what most of us would do. They hid. They crawled under their beds, locked themselves in bathrooms, or pulled covers over their eyes, waiting for morning. But the broadcast required an audience. If you looked away from the screen for more than 90 seconds, the audio track changed. The heartbeat stopped. And a voice, sounding exactly like a deceased relative or a lost childhood friend, would whisper from the dark corner of your ceiling, "You're missing the best part." None of the people who hid survived to see the sunrise. Then there was the third group, the onlookers. These were the people too paralyzed by pure primal terror to move, look away, or blink. For nearly 40 minutes, they stared directly into the featureless face of the animated figure. At 3:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the local station was scheduled to turn its main transmitters back on, the cartoon character walked right up to the edge of the frame. It pressed its pale, animated hands against the inside of the glass screen. The survivors stated that the glass actually flexed outward into their living rooms, stretching like thin plastic. The figure leaned in until its blank face filled the entire display. And then it smiled. A massive, jagged, impossibly wide grin ripped open across its blank face, revealing rows of pristine human teeth, except one tooth was missing right from the front. At exactly 4 a.m., the signal cut out. The TVs snapped back to regular static, and the power cords that had been pulled from the walls fell limply to the floor. The freezing cold vanished, replaced instantly by the suffocating smell of ozone and burnt plastic. When police conducted wellness checks the following afternoon, they found 42 homes completely deserted. The front doors were locked from the inside. The cars were still in.